Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hutter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemar, the sergeant at arms of the PBA.
And today we're excited to have another one of our Suffolk County legislators, Chad Lennon, on with us. Thanks for coming on, Chad.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for joining us.
So for everybody out there, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your road into elected office here in Suffolk County.
Sure. So prior to being in this seat, I was an attorney, mostly working military law, national security, federal employment, a reservist in the Marine Corps. I just got promoted to lieutenant colonel.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was working part-time for Congressman Lalotta as a congressional aide, and prior to that was part-time with State Senator Tony Palumbo. I was active duty in the Marine Corps. I also worked at the DA's office. I was the director of the Veterans Clinic at Toro, did criminal defense down in Maryland for a little bit. And I also worked in construction with Local 14 out of New York City, as well as a mixed martial arts instructor for a while.
That's very cool. And, it's great to see another one of the, local elected officials being a union member, right? A union carpenter and a veteran. And that being a veteran is a big part of your persona and your mission in government. It seems like you're now the vice chair of the Veterans Committee here in Suffolk County, and you've really taken that role to heart. And you do a lot of great work out there for the veterans.
Well, thank you. I know I have a responsibility for that community, being the only veteran on the legislature. But I've been involved in stuff for years, doing work within the veterans community, from pro bono work as an attorney, doing the different types of runs and walks that are out there, advocating with the State Bar Association, the County Bar Association, writing articles, informing people what's going on. Because right now, less than 1% serve the nation in the military, and 6% have served in a lifetime. And if you look at 1975, the draft ended. Mm-hmm. So I think in about 10 years, you're going to see that number drastically drop.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. And, one of the things that's really cool about your experience and, all the good work you do for the veterans now is, at least from a police perspective, we very often have a lot of trust in our peers, right? And people who have gone through the same things that we've gone through. And I assume it's the same way for the veterans. And especially when you're talking about, suicide awareness and mental health issues, it's probably important to be able to confide in and look to another combat veteran for help and assistance. Because a lot of those veterans that are going through these mental health issues, it comes from their experience in combat.
Yeah, and it's just, you go through hard times that creates a special bond. And a lot of what you guys see as well is you're going to have a lot of boredom with moments of absolute chaos. Mm-hmm. And when folks are calling you, it's usually not for a good thing. If something is happening that you need to have an emergency response to. When you're in the military, it's the same thing. It's lots of boredom with moments of sheer chaos. So, right. And as well as going through hard times, going through difficult situations, seeing things most of the population is never going to be exposed to, it creates special bonds. So when you speak to somebody who's gone through that, you have that bond there. Just as yourselves with law enforcement officers, you see somebody else, maybe not in the county police department, but you have some bond there of understanding what you go through, not just with the actual experiences, but through the training too, because you go through specific training to prepare you for the job.
Right.
With our mental health stuff, like one of the big things is having our peer people being able to have clearance to be able to have conversation and be protected for that conversation. Is that something similar? Does the military do the same thing?
Absolutely, because one of the biggest things that you're concerned about in the military is having your weapon taken from you. Mm-hmm. It's just part of the culture. You can't have your weapon less than one arm's distance from you. So I remember, especially getting back from a deployment, is you turn your weapon in and you go back, and all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, where's my weapon at? So there's certain aspects to understand that, hey, if you're looking for help, if you're trying to talk to someone, you can't immediately be like, I got to take their weapon away from it. No, understand the ramifications of that. You might even make it worse for that person by doing that. So having that peer-to-peer is important because you understand the culture that you're in. You understand what's important to you.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense because we speak about the value of, the mental health process here in Suffolk County and the need for there to be a process where a police officer's gun isn't immediately taken away from him because there might be a worry of, a suicide risk, of course. And if that is the case, then we have to do what we can to protect the member. But not every mental health issue ends up being a suicide risk. Sometimes people are just having a hard time with life in general. And it's important to not take away that police officer's ability to work, have some normalcy in their life. And honestly, it ends up hurting our pockets because a lot of cops can't work the overtime that maybe they're relying on, right? Especially this day and age. So many kids are playing sports. There's a lot of expense. Everybody who goes to a grocery store knows that the cost of living has gone up drastically. So a lot of cops rely on overtime to maintain their standard of living.
Yeah, things have gotten difficult. You just go out and get an egg sandwich and a coffee. It's like $15.
Oh, I know, it's crazy.
What did I just buy here?
Right.
But you spoke to it. You got so many other stressors in life, and there's nothing wrong with saying, "Hey, I'm having a difficult time." You all work off hours. I'm working midnights. I don't see my kids. I don't get to their games. I'm not reading with my daughter in the middle of the night. My wife's saying to me, "How come you're not out going to dinner with me?" Because you're working so much. So there's stress there, and just saying, "Hey, I got to talk to somebody about this. How do I work through this issue right now?" It's not saying that you're incapable of doing anything. It's just, I got some stuff going on. I need to talk to someone. What are your thoughts as my friend, as my peer, of how I go through this? I think another thing that's great is having a peer group going, "Oh, I can just listen. Yeah, I feel that same way too. Oh, you're going through that same situation as I am. I'm not alone here."
Right. Normalizing it, taking away the stigma,
Exactly.
especially for military and police. Everybody, the stereotype is to have that hard outer shell. And we talk about this often. It's a common theme on this show. But we have to break that stigma and let people know it's okay to, talk about the stuff you're going through.
And when one person opens up, usually that opens up the floodgates and a lot more people start opening up and sharing their experiences.
Exactly. And there's certain times that you can't talk about stuff. You're in the middle of a combat zone. Maybe that's not the exact time. If you're all out on patrol, that's probably not the time to open up and talk about stuff because you have to focus on what you need to take care of. But when you come back from that, that's the time you're able to say, okay, let me decompress. Let me process what I just went through. Because if you go to, say, a murder scene, most people aren't seeing that.
Right.
That's a traumatic event. The same thing as anyone who's out there gets in a car accident. That's a traumatic event that somebody just went through. So how do you process that? Go through what you need to go through to get yourself settled in to whatever your new situation is, or how to get yourself a solid foundation for where you are. And then go, okay, now I need to process this. What did I just go through? How do I work through this? What do I need to do for me as well as everybody else? So there are times when you just suck it up and deal with it. Yes, but that's not all the time.
Right.
There's certain situations you need to focus on what you need to do, but then go back and go, okay, I went through something. How do I work through this?
Reevaluate yourself.
Exactly.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up, having that decompression period after the stress is over. Once, for a military, once they're back home, very often they go through like a 30-day decompression period, right, before they go back to be with their families and be home, not just stateside. In the police world, sometimes we'll be at a murder scene or we'll be involved in some sort of critical incident where maybe somebody's life is taken or we risked our lives and we're expected to be back at work the next day. There is no decompression period over a career for, a lot of Suffolk County cops that spans 30 years.
Yeah, you go through a gang case and in the next hour, you're at your kid's baseball game.
Right.
So there is no decompression. So you went from a high stress situation, dealing with people who want to not just hurt you, but possibly kill you, to my kid's Little League game.
Right.
How do you make that transition?
Right.
You're living two separate lives, basically.
You're making two separate lives at the same time because I'm sure you're still in the back of your head thinking about that case. This is your job. This is what you're doing. Just like with my job, I was thinking, okay, how do I progress? How do I move forward with what I'm doing? And you're thinking about that case. It's fresh in your mind while trying to read to your daughter at night, while trying to play Transformers with your son.
Right. And, I've been open about, this in my career. The cases that have stayed with me and bothered me for days, weeks, months at a time are actually the cases involving children, because I am a father, right?
Yes.
I am a family man. And when I've gone to like a SIDS case, for example, seeing that, baby passed away for no real explanation and having to try to comfort the parents that are there that just had their baby taken, like that's something that's very difficult to deal with. And then meanwhile, I'm going home to go play catch with my kids in the front yard.
How do you look at another kid the same? Even if it's not your kid, if you're looking at your nephew and your niece and other kids in the community that you live in, you look at it differently. Like, oh my God, it could happen to anybody here. How do I prevent that? How do I stop that? Because your natural reaction is, how do I protect people? And you can't protect everybody. But when you go and you see those tragic situations, I can't imagine how folks deal with children crimes because it's innocent kids.
Right. These cops that are working in, some of these sex trafficking units or in special victims, and you have to deal with these crimes against children like that definitely wears on you, because
those trafficking cases are horrific.
It's horrible.
I heard about one of the worst cases I heard about was a 12-year-old boy who was being trafficked here in Suffolk, and he fought against his traffickers. They ripped his teeth out. That's here in our backyard. And how could your heart not break? Now, luckily, the kid was found. You had great people in the community that looked to help the child with his teeth and move forward in his life. How does that not stick with you? How does that not burn a memory that's going to stick with you forever?
Right. Talk about PTSD. Like that's affecting these kids for the rest of their lives.
It's affecting the kids and all of you who respond to it.
Right.
They're the most vulnerable people in the most vulnerable communities. A lot of these people that are the victims of sex trafficking.
Yes.
It's really happening right in front of us, and we don't see it. It goes like, it's just not there. You don't see it.
A lot of people, I think, are sticking their head in the sand. When I was a teenager in high school.
Right. Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. It was a huge issue with drugs that is compounded to today, which is why I think we have the sex trafficking, the human trafficking issues we have in our own backyard. So if you don't want to talk about it, it's going to be worse. Look, right. I'm in Rocky Point. I have the 6th district. It happened in Sound Beach, the same school district as my kids go to. This is not some crime-ridden area. It's everywhere. Right.
And, I'm glad you bring up the connection to, the drug trade. Because a lot of the time when I was a cop on patrol, sometimes I would respond to like Smith Point Motel, and there'd be an issue with prostitution at the motel. And very often it's these girls that are 19, 20, 21 years old, but they're hooked on heroin, and they're turning tricks just to try to fix their heroin addiction. And it's very sad, because it's the drug addiction that ultimately leads to them getting pimped out to fix their drug need.
And criminals are not stupid. They're smart. They say, I can sell a drug once. I can sell this person over and over and over. And then it's not even just the drug addicts that are out on the street. It's someone who goes out on a weekend, and all of a sudden they get a bunch of drugs for the weekend, and they're partying for the weekend, think they're going to go back to work. And next thing you know, goes, hey, you're not leaving. Mm-hmm. You got to go work this off now. I just sold you $5,000 worth of drugs. You don't have 5,000. Go in the hotel room. Go over here, and you're going to take care of it now.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. It's one of those issues that, like you put it, some people have their head in the sand. They don't want to recognize it, or they don't see it because it's not in plain sight. But a lot of these motels and hotels have become, cesspools of this sort of behavior. And we were just talking off air. You actually have an idea to try to help alleviate this issue a little bit in the hotels and motels.
Yeah, one of the big issues for me when I was running was talking about human trafficking. Mm-hmm. And it's something I've looked at and researched a lot with the Suffolk County Anti-Trafficking Initiative, SCADI, with law enforcement partners, the DA, all the folks from SCADI. And what I've heard a lot of, and as well as I would say our partners at the state, the New York State Minority Task Force on Human Trafficking, we had a couple conferences, and hotels were one of the issues. And you can go to a hotel and just check in. Well, how about we have some photo IDs? I don't care you make up a name. We got your picture. Mm-hmm. How about you digitize the records? Instead of sitting there as an investigator and going for days on end through paper copies, digitize records. It'll make it easier for the investigations. No more hourly rates.
Right.
What are we doing? We know exactly what that is. And I love some of these advertisements you see on TV for hotels. You're pretty much saying to go have an affair at your hotel.
Yeah,
that's what your advertiser's telling me.
Right.
So this is some of the stuff we're looking at. I'm looking forward to introducing legislation very soon on this. At the same time, I'm also looking at the pop-up quote unquote massage parlors, because that's another big problem we have.
What kind of repercussions are you looking to kind of enforce by this legislation?
To hold people accountable. Look, what happened to Sayville Motor Lodge? It wasn't just a hotel. It's people who own the hotel who are complicit in this. Mm-hmm. And we've heard over and over, and I've heard over and over again, is hotels and motels have a lot of this human trafficking taking place, where it's renting out a room for days on end, and it's those customers go in there. The pimps are then in another room in the hotel, or maybe they're just in the parking lot. But if you can know who's going in there, who's staying there, you have a picture, you have something to go off of. If you have those records digitized, it's going to make investigators' jobs a lot easier. Look, I'm an intelligence officer on the military side, so I understand when you can do a Control F, makes things a little bit easier instead of going through paper copies over and over again. So we just want to not have the foundation for traffickers to succeed. We got to stop it. We have to do something. And that's one of the loopholes. I don't know if it's really a loophole, but that's one of the gaps that we have right now to help combat this. So let's fill that gap. Let's make sure that law enforcement and the prosecutors have the resources they need to combat this issue. This is not a issue. It's just on the border. The northeast of our country, where we are, is the hot point for human trafficking.
Right. And, being able to hold people accountable and giving the police another tool in the toolbox to be able to hold the bad actors accountable is important. And that's what's great about Suffolk County and the willingness of the legislature and the current Romaine administration to pass local laws and give us those tools for the police and detectives to investigate crimes, and then for the district attorney and his ADAs to prosecute the crimes and make sure bad actors have deterrence and there's a disincentive to go into the business of being a pimp and trafficking human beings.
I think that's smart too, going after the hotels and motels, because if you don't have those, like, where else do you really go?
Right.
It's breeding ground. So yeah, you can have homes, but most people that live in a residential area be like, why are there 10 different cars coming to my neighbor in one day?
Right.
Obviously, it's going to kick off an indicator and warning something is happening. But you go to hotel motels, people are always in and out. You go to these massage parlors, people are always in and out. So, these are areas that it's happening. It's hotbeds. It's about time that we do something to help combat this.
Right. And the first step in fixing a problem is recognizing that it exists.
Exactly.
Right. So we're recognizing that this is a hotbed. This is a problem. So let's try to come up with a solution. And maybe this legislation leads to something else 4 years down the road that really ends up putting the issue to bed, right? Maybe it's just the first step of a few steps that we're going to have to take, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
And that's part of the job too, is that maybe we don't get to the solution today, but if we start making those steps today, we're going to get there.
Right.
Is there any like collaboration with like Nassau County and the city? I know, like, it's funny that we're having this conversation today. I feel like I read the other day that the city under Mamdani, and he takes over, he wants to legalize prostitution.
Right.
Which would I think I ever heard of.
Yeah, that's
right.
Because these are not people, for the most part, who are willingly going, yes, I want to be trafficked. These are people, it's the same thing as I talked about with the border. When I was on the National Military Command Center at the Pentagon watching what was happening with the border, with all these traffickers coming across. Now, let's say you have people who want to come here for the right reason. They're stuck with the cartels that are sending them over the border. And then they find out they have family here or money. Well, guess what? Now you owe me 10 grand. Now you owe me 50 grand. Mm-hmm. And we're not letting you go until we get that. So what do? They start trafficking them.
Right.
And how many, with 300,000 kids went missing in the last administration.
That's absurd.
It's crazy.
Just think about that. 300,000 missing kids.
Yeah.
We did a horrible job. That we did not set a foundation for them to succeed. We set them up for failure, and we empowered the cartels who got into the trafficking business.
Right. And I think it's a huge step in the right direction that President Trump has now labeled these cartels as terrorist organizations.
And they have been. And it's hysterical to hear from the 80s, the war on terror. And I said for years, what war?
Right, right.
It's just it's a policing. It's not a war. When you take the fight to someone, that's a war. Otherwise, you were just policing, which was being reactive instead of going after. Look, it's the thing with fentanyl. Precursors are in China, and they're coming right through the border in Mexico. We know where it's coming from. I've been on the border with my Marines. We've seen it happen. I've talked to Border Patrol. They've told us, yes, these guys just come over. And I think we've seen some of the from the 80s with, what's his name from Colombia? The big drug kingpin.
Oh, Pablo Escobar.
Yeah, so they used to take their planes, fly them, land them, leave the plane. That's how much money they're making.
You're willing to sacrifice a plane. That's wild.
And it's I saw when I first got on the border a few years ago, there was an SUV in the middle of the water between the U.S. and Mexico. And it was, we were chasing them. They just called their buddies across the border, drove the truck right into the water, took the boats, got out, put the drugs on there, left the car, and they're gone. Because the border is like pretty much at arm's distance. That's how, obviously exaggeration, but that's how close it was. It wasn't so far away, open area. These were built up areas they were at.
Right, right. Yeah, it really is incredible. And a lot of this stuff, you feel like it should be common sense and it should be bipartisan, right? Let's secure the border. Let's just know who's coming in and out of the country, especially after what happened on 9/11, right? It's almost like people forget too quickly some of the bad things that have actually happened here.
Oh, it's completely forgotten. I think it was even a few years later, it was forgotten what happened on 9/11. And look, I was in Staten Island. I saw it. I experienced it. I lived through it. My father was in Manhattan, had to pick up family members and get back. My cousin had to walk across the bridges to get back to where he lived in Queens. And I remember that moment that the towers went down. We felt the ground shake. We heard it come down because we're looking out our window, watching it, looking at the TV going, are we really seeing this?
That's incredible.
And we thought 10,000 people were dead right there. Mm-hmm. We're lucky. I hate to say it like that, but we're lucky that we didn't have 10,000 that died, because how many stories were there? Oh, I was late getting to work. Imagine it was an hour later.
Right.
It really, that's, I grew up in Queens too, so we were able to see like the smoke from my school, what was going on in the city. It really is, it's funny how people forget about that. And then I don't like the political games they play with the border. They try to make it seem like we don't care about the people that are coming in. But I feel like that was our only fight against closing the border.
Right. And we're not talking about ending immigration. We're just talking about legal immigration. Like, we want it to be done the right way. And I've spoken to a few friends of mine who are either immigrants or the children of immigrants, and a lot of them feel the same way. If they did it the right way, why shouldn't everybody have to do it the right way?
I'm second generation American on my father's side. So my grandfather, my father's father, came to this country, and his mother came to this country, and they came through Ellis Island. So,
right.
And look, I get it. You want to think that there's good people everywhere. There's not. Right. There are people who want to kill you because you're from this country. They don't care what your political view is. Oh, you're from America? I want to cut your head off. Literally, people wanting to do that around the world.
Right.
And get out of this country and go look at some of these third world nations and what's happening. It is rife with crime. People who are bad actors who want to take advantage of you.
Right. And, you speak on that from some level of experience too. Like, you've been in these third world countries. You've been on combat missions in Afghanistan. Like,
I was in the drug capital of the world at Helmand Province, and it was covered in poppy, covered in marijuana. And these drug lords would sit there and go, you're going to farm and grow drugs for us, where they made $1, or it's 25 cents to grow corn. And they go, by the way, the Americans leave and you don't listen to us, we're going to cut your head off and kill your entire family. Not to mention the other stuff that I probably shouldn't talk about on this podcast, about what you hear and what you see them doing to the people there, and you're not allowed to intervene.
That's incredible. It's incredible. And, all these people that, talk about the immigration as, a human rights issue, whatever. Yes, but what's going on in the countries that they're fleeing, what they're trying to escape from, those are definitely human rights issues as well. And I feel like they don't focus enough on what these people are fleeing and how we could try to at least assist those countries in regaining control and having legitimate forms of government and trying to help the people there so our borders don't have to be overcome.
Who's also helping them flee? It's most of the time it's not just like a family that's walking millions of miles to come to cross the United States border. It's usually the cartel that facilitates that, like you were talking about before, and now you owe them for getting you past the border.
Exactly. They recognize an opportunity to make more money, to exploit people again. And that was labor trafficking, sex trafficking. And you'll hear the stories of there's dozens of people in trucks that get baked to death because the cartels do not care about them. They care about the money. They don't care about the lives. They care about the money. So lives will be ruined, families will be ruined, and they don't care. And they will kill you if you get in the way of them.
Right. Now,
I was at the major city tour conference a couple of years ago, and there was a police chief from down in Arizona, and he spoke about this issue. He was like a county off from the border and was basically saying that they couldn't just stop the cartels from facilitating people getting in, that they paid a lot of money for the families would pay a lot of money to get them across, and they kind of like guide them on a route. They overtook their radio lines and basically facilitated all this.
Yeah, they're doing intelligence activities as well. They're listening to conversations. They're tapping into what's going on. They are playing the same game of surveilling and reconnaissance of law enforcement, of American assets to see how they can get across the border. These are not stupid people. And a lot of folks think, oh, criminals are stupid. They don't know it. No, they're very smart because they adapt. They overcome the issues that they see of how do we get around this. You had, and right on the border, I think there's a Sinaloa cartel was digging the tunnels underground, and no one ever thought of that. And how much do they get away with trafficking in drugs, trafficking in people, trafficking in weapons? And going back to 9/11, let's not forget, there are those who are extreme terrorists coming here looking to blow us up. So what else are they getting through? And that was one of my biggest concerns too, is what if they get an explosive device through? I'm talking about a massive explosive device, a dirty bomb, something along those lines that can have far-reaching effects on electricity, ability to ship food and water for an entire region in this country.
Right. And, you have experience working for Congressman Nick LaLota as well. And Nick LaLota in Congress has been one of the outspoken people that really does support strengthening the border and sees the domino effect that the lack of border security creates. Because we were facing the opioid epidemic here in Suffolk County. And a lot of that is because of the heroin and the fentanyl that's coming in illegally from these unsecured borders.
Are drugs being grown and manufactured in this country? Some. Most of it's not.
Right.
Venezuela, say what you want. They've been dealing in the drug trade for a very long time. China is dealing in the drug trade. The Mexican cartels, look, the Mexican government, they're full of corruption.
Right.
And it's not even the cartels. They have people that are very high and powerful, but when you can pay off what's supposed to be law enforcement, that's supposed to protect people, you can do whatever you want. So all the drugs from there. Look at what happened to Colombia. Not Fidel Castro. I forget his name again, from Colombia, but he took over. He almost
Pablo Escobar
almost bought he pretty much bought a seat in Congress.
Yes.
So imagine what could happen, what the ramifications could be. Look, drugs destroy lives, they destroy families, and it's not even just the drugs that I got into it. What happened, and we talked about opioid epidemic, is when I was doing criminal defense, there was a kid who got in a car accident, extremely hurt, went through the windshield, goes to the hospital, put on all these painkillers, gets addicted to opioids, turns to heroin because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. So something can happen in your life, and all of a sudden now you've turned to drugs, and you never thought you'd be that. But because you got so injured and you're given painkillers, you get addicted to it.
Right. And the corrupt governments in some of these countries that this stuff is originating in and coming over the border, like that's a real legitimate concern. We had Errol Toulon on the podcast recently, and he spoke about a trip he took to El Salvador with Police Commissioner Catalina, and how he went a few years prior and then went again as a follow-up trip, and he saw a vast difference in the way the jails were run and how there were more deterrence to committing these crimes because people were starting to be held accountable because the prior governmental administration was corrupt and they were soft on crime. And MS-13 had a stronghold on a lot of those elected officials.
Exactly.
And now the new government is being tougher on crime. They're holding people accountable. The concrete production in the country ceased for a year where nobody privately could buy concrete in El Salvador. It was all going to the construction of this new jail because that's how big of an issue it was to be able to create a facility to stop putting these bad guys away.
It's amazing what happens when you hold people accountable for the actions.
Right.
Just think about being a parent. You imagine just let your kids do whatever they want. Or do you hold them accountable?
It shows how important public safety truly is, though.
Absolutely.
Right.
Your communities have nothing without public safety. Everything starts there because no one wants to live there if it's full of crime. Nobody wants to set up a business there. How many businesses leave these big cities that are just full of crime? So CVS leaves the inner city because it's full of crime. When you don't enforce the laws, when you don't hold people accountable, when businesses also tell people, let folks steal things. Well, why am I buying anything?
Right. It's bizarre. Like, am I the sucker here?
Yeah.
I have a friend that is a pharmacist, and he's told me before that like people come in the stores. He's working in the city at one point. And he would tell me that the corporation would tell them, don't stop anybody from stealing anything. You'll be fired for doing that. I think that's
wild.
Absurd. Yeah.
It's just wild.
What stops anybody from walking in and taking stuff?
Yeah. So come to my house, take what you want and leave. No. And again, it's, if you hold people accountable for their actions, we've seen this, right? The catalytic converters. You're not coming to Suffolk County anymore with that. We talked about changing the laws. We saw these fast and furious wannabes coming from the city out here trying to set up shop. We stopped that right away. We worked at the town, the county, and the state level because they would take these cars and that were $100,000 and just keep the cars. Now we're keeping your car now. So you don't have the instrument to commit these crimes. And let's not forget, when you hurt other people, innocent people, they were blocking an ambulance. Now, maybe the person who wasn't innocent down in Patchogue for this, maybe because I think they were one of the people who went there to watch this, gets hit by the car. The ambulance is stuck in Miller Place, can't go. Now you can't react to people. You can't respond to people.
Right. Yeah, there's a big domino effect that a lot of people don't understand the full concept of.
No.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to focus on too, just so everybody out there gets to hear it from you, is about your military experience, because you were in Afghanistan, you were in combat zones, you led missions as a platoon leader, and you ended up coming home as a Purple Heart recipient as well. So you've been in the trenches, and I think it's important for the residents of Suffolk County, because there is such a big veteran population here, and there is a wide respect for members of the service. I think it's important for people to hear your story and experience overseas as well.
Sure. So 17 and a half years ago now, I joined the Marine Corps, and I went through OCS, the basic school, MOS school, got sent out to Camp Pendleton in California, and immediately started working up to go to Afghanistan. The unit just came back from Iraq, and you just get yourselves together. We shot out to Afghanistan. We were in Helmand Province, and I was all over Helmand Province. Pretty much the first week there, we got hit with an IED. The explosion. So it's funny. People say, what was your reaction? There was none. When you see someone about to punch you in the face, there's that split second. You're like, oh, I'm about to get hit. Mm-hmm. There was none of that. It was just an immediate, wait, what just happened? And for us, it was interesting because the concussion of the explosion blew up oral water bottles and actually blew up the magazines I had. So all of a sudden I have rounds all over the vehicle, shredded up magazines. We're all full of mud because it's Afghanistan. It's all full of sand. And you're just like, wait a minute, what just happened here? In fact, the bulletproof glass we had cracked as well. Wow. So then my driver, it happened on his side. He broke his foot. I had an actual naval medical doctor with us who had a concussion. The radio operator had a concussion and post-concussion syndrome. I got injured as well. And I hate to say ironically, but ironically, the one person who was most vulnerable, the gunner, had no injuries.
Oh, wow.
So that was like pretty much our welcome to Afghanistan moment. And then, we hit a couple other IEDs that were out there. We got shot at a few times. But again, it's the drug capital of the world.
Right.
So you got drug lords everywhere. DEA was out there watching them, other agencies. But it's the first time that any foreign military was in Marja since I think the time of Alexander the Great.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. I wouldn't have realized that. That's centuries of span, between military, conflict there or whatever.
And the running statement was Afghanistan is where empires go to die. And because it's so difficult for the terrain that you have in Afghanistan. So we're out there for days and it's 140 degrees outside at night, and maybe it's 80 degrees, but you're sitting there shivering because it's such a drastic change in temperature. So you're sitting there going, it's 80 degrees outside. Why am I in sweats freezing right now?
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. So how much time did you spend over there in Afghanistan?
It was 7 months out there. When we got hit with the IED, I was down for about a week, and then I was finally able to go out again because of the concussion and all that, and the stitches were taken out. But it was all over the place. I had friends around there. A friend of mine was shot and killed because it's the first time that they held elections in Afghanistan, and he was posting security for those elections.
Oh, wow. So I remember seeing in the news, coverage about them having elections in Afghanistan. That's incredible. So it's like, some of the stuff that I might, because I never served in the military. I went from, college right into the NYPD before I became a Suffolk cop. So, I've always had a lot of friends who did serve. It's just the nature of policing. About a third of our job is probably veterans. Yeah. So I remember seeing some of these things in the news that you're actually living through.
Yeah, it was interesting to be part of history because you look back now, especially since we abandoned Afghanistan and looking at what's happening, and it's, that withdrawal, which it really wasn't a withdrawal, it was an abandonment, it brought up a lot of other feelings for myself and others because it's like we just spent 20 years there, mm-hmm. got injured, friends died from being there and from the after effects of being there, besides the mental health, the burn pit exposure, the gunner I had in that vehicle, he died 2 years ago from bone and lung cancer because of the burn pit exposure.
Oh my God.
The platoon sergeant died from bone and lung cancer because of exposure to burn pits. So all the after effects.
The sacrifices that people don't even realize that our military people are making. So it's far after the actual service.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing as Agent Orange with our Vietnam veterans.
Right.
Luckily, we didn't have to wait decades for it to be recognized. It was still a fight to recognize burn pits. But I'm living with some of those effects too. I've had nodules in my lungs. I have every respiratory condition that burn pits are connected to, and I'm not the only one. And I tell folks, don't just go out and get an X-ray that the VA gives you. Go out and get an actual scan, because that's how they found the nodules in my lungs. Luckily, they haven't been any additional ones. They haven't grown. So if I get my scan coming up after the calendar year and everything is good, I'll be like, yep, I definitely don't have cancer now, because it takes 5 years to make sure that they don't grow.
Yeah. And talking about mental health and some of the issues that military and first responders face, sometimes that's based on survivor's remorse, right?
Oh, survivor's guilt. I think
survivor's guilt. I'm sorry, survivor's guilt.
So the actor who played Kylo Ren in the Star Wars movies, Adam Driver, was a Marine.
Yeah.
And he was preparing for a combat deployment. He got injured and couldn't go. Imagine that. You're training, you're ready to go, all your friends go, and then you have friends who don't come home, and you're like, maybe if I was there, I could have done something. Maybe if it was me, why wasn't it me? My friend who was shot and killed was married, was planning to come back home and have a family. I was single at the time, and you go, why? It should have been me, because I'm the one who's single. I didn't have a family. Why is the guy who has a family the one who's not with us anymore? So it is very hard. Even when you go out on patrols of, hey, they didn't send me on that patrol, and all of a sudden something happened. Maybe I could have prevented it. So there's definitely a big part of that. I think Adam Driver does talk about that and that experience. And it's also not even just being in a combat zone. Think about mortuary affairs Marines. They're the ones who are taking care of the bodies when they come back home. The truck drivers that were transporting the bodies of those who were killed in action. Those that are picking up the equipment and all the goods that they had with them, all their clothes, everything they brought with them, and having to transport that. That can be very difficult to deal with.
Yeah. So we always recognize the fact that when a police officer goes through a critical incident, it's not just the police officer that deals with the mental ramifications of that, right? We spoke recently with one of our guests about the threat of risking your life out there is always real. It's in the back of your head. It's in the back of your spouse's head, your children's head. But when something actually happens, it becomes super real now. It hit close to home. So focusing on the family's mental health is very important for us to try to develop into the future. Are there programs within the military that help those families of people that have served?
I never had a family when I was active duty, and being a reservist is a little different because you're spread out everywhere. Mm-hmm. But I think you brought up a great point. How do you go to your family and explain what you just went through?
Right.
How are they going to understand that? And having to talk to someone and explain who doesn't have those shared experiences of, hey, I just went to this scene and this is what I saw. I had to look at videos. I had to watch videos, and this is what I had to watch. How do you explain that to someone to understand, especially when your family's depending on you? How do you look at your kids the same? How do you eventually talk to your kids about the threats that are out there? My kids are young too, 5 and 7. And, there's been some situations in the neighborhood that I have to explain to my son a little bit about. Hey, your buddy down the street, his mom is addicted to drugs and gave birth to a child addicted to fentanyl and was living with a sex offender. How do I explain that to a 7-year-old?
Right. That's a lot of information to take in at once.
So you're seeing in your jobs the worst of society. Mm-hmm. How do you explain the threats that are out there to protect your family, to protect your loved ones?
Right. A lot of guys just want to turn it off when they get home too. That's the problem too. You're not communicating anything.
And you're just digging it further down. And then you have that moment that you explode, or you have that moment of the thoughts just got too much. Because it may not be, I'm having all these problems, and all of a sudden it's just, everything comes at one moment. A lot of bad things happen, and then maybe you're by yourself and you get lost in your thoughts, and it's just that moment. And if you're not able to reach out to someone, if you don't reach out to someone of like, hey, I'm having a hard time right now. Hey, I'll come right over. I'll find someone to come over. Like, let's talk. What's going on?
Yeah, and I think that concept of trying to explain these things to your children is very important too, because there are risks out there, and I don't want my kids to grow up naive to danger. I want them to be able to recognize a potential danger and get away from it if possible.
We talked about the human trafficking of being as young as 12 years old. What if it's even younger and we don't know about it?
Right.
How do we explain that to children to understand that they're so innocent and they look at everyone as your friend and you want to high five everyone and play with it? How do you really tell them this person's not your friend? There are people out there who want to exploit you. Do you even know what the term exploit means? How do I protect them? Because look, the job of parents is to be able to prepare your kids to go out in the world and not need you. How do you get there?
Right. And, this is something that just hit home for me recently as well. There was a teacher in my daughter's school who was just caught by one of those catch a predator groups.
This week.
Yeah, just this week.
Yep.
Exactly. And he's my daughter's music teacher. Like, it is crazy to think about. And this is a teacher that my daughter really liked. She thought he was a nice guy. So this is her first real world experience of feeling like betrayed. Like, oh my God, this
That's crazy.
This is somebody I trust. This is somebody who I liked being in the class with him, but he was a bad guy. And my wife and I had to explain that to her.
And then you have to talk to your kids of, did anything happen? How do you have that conversation too?
Right. So, and it's strange too, because, you start seeing some of these social media posts from some of the former students, and because you always wonder if there were any former complaints or anything. Right. And I just want to be clear. I love our school district. I think they do a great job. The superintendent there is always keeping the parents informed of, whatever's going on in the schools that we should know about. And they suspended this teacher as soon as the information was available to them. But it makes you wonder, like, were there any flags at any point in time? So I saw a social media post where some of his former students brought up, oh yeah, it was weird that he used to reward us with pickles. Right? I mean, and that's bizarre. So I had to ask my daughter, like, did your teacher ever try to reward you with a pickle? Like, are there pickles in the class? Like, what is this about pickles? And she had to tell me, like, yeah, if we did something good, we would be able to put, I forget the word she used, but like a star in a jar or something like that. And, eventually if you get enough stars, you win a pickle. Like it's bizarre. And that's, hindsight's 2020. Like that is strange. But, maybe nobody thought it was strange at the time because he came off as a nice guy and a good teacher.
And that's the thing. They talked about there are a ton of great most teachers out there are fantastic.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Any industry. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You're always going to have the 10% that suck. Yeah. So it's not going to define an entire industry, but you got to keep your eyes out.
And I would say it's not even 10%. Like, yeah. Right. I mean, I argue all the time, like, especially.
It could be 1%, whatever it is. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's such a smaller population that it doesn't matter. It doesn't define the industry. It doesn't define the profession. But you have folks everywhere who just are terrible people.
Yeah. Yeah. It is strange. And the school district has done a great job with communicating with the parents. We know that we get this is an isolated thing. I'm not painting with a broad brush, but it makes you wonder if there were signs out there.
Yeah.
So, with all your experience as a veteran, military guy, the chair of the Veterans Committee in the legislature, and all the suicide awareness you try to bring. You just recently did a 66-mile march, which was pretty impressive too. And it was all over, News 12, Newsday, a lot of media sources covered this march.
Good. Get the spotlight on the issue. That's what it was all about, because it's been going on for 20 years. Nothing has essentially changed. So let's do something different. Let's make sure we keep the spotlight on the issue. And that's what we look to do. That's what I look to do. And I think we did that. And I think one of the great stories is that during the hike, we had people jumping in, jumping out, 20, 30, 40 miles, some that did the whole 66. But I heard about so many people pushing themselves that they've done more than they ever did. My friend Mike's like, I did 6 miles training, but I only did 30. Only 30? You did 5 times what you were doing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You had a 10-year-old boy do 30 miles with us.
That's
amazing. Somebody who did 40 miles. Like, people blew away their records. And I think that was the point of it too, is that, we were in physical pain, but we all were there for each other. We all pushed each other. We went farther than we thought we could. And especially when we came in that last mile, a big group, that's what it is. We come in together. We do it together as a group. And that's what we're going to do as a community, wherever your community is, here, Montana, Oklahoma, wherever it is that you have a veteran community, we're going to support them. And for the law enforcement community, mental health issues, it's not just law enforcement, it's everyone else that's going to have to be there for them. Those who are mental health professionals, the other stressors of maybe it's the marriage, the finances, being there, being a resource to support someone.
Right. And you know, the value of these marches and the news coverage of it is bringing the awareness, right? We spoke about earlier, recognizing a problem and taking steps towards fixing it. And I think this was a great way to bring awareness to the veteran suicide, because, you know, we hear all the time about that number, you know, 22. There's a 22 per day average of veterans committing suicide somewhere in this country, right? And if you extrapolate that to a year, 22 times 365, it's over 6,400 people a year committing suicide because of the experiences they went through defending our country and protecting our citizens.
And let's not forget that according to the CDC, for each completed suicide, 25 attempts. So every day is 22 take their own life, 550 attempt.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's the numbers that we're talking about.
And that number makes sense to me, but I never heard it verbalized like that. Like, that is crazy, because we, you know, as police officers, we respond to suicides, but we respond to a lot more attempted suicides than we do suicides. So that number makes perfect sense, but I've never heard anybody actually verbalize it.
And we had those that were survivors of suicide. My friend Eric came out with the story, and he talked about how he tried to hang himself when he was still in. And, you know, I've friends of mine that have written multiple suicide notes. So just think about the attempts that you respond to. How about the ones that never really got attempted with the physical aspect, but they're writing the notes? Those are attempts. They're writing a note to say goodbye.
Right. You're seeing some sort of intent there.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, so I think all the work you do for veterans, all the work you're doing to put spotlights on problems we're dealing with here in Suffolk County is great. I think you're a very interesting person. Your whole background, your whole story, very, very unique and very cool. But you also have a very unique and cool world record as well. And it came up to something we learned about a couple years ago. But you dragged a 400-pound chain for a mile. Yes. And it was recognized as, I guess it was the fastest pace this has ever been done at.
So it was 63 minutes and 18 seconds to take a 400-pound chain for 1 mile. But I think what was great about it is I was able to raise $6,000 for Semper Fi funds.
Oh, that's great.
So it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to go set a record and I'm going to be awesome. It's no, there's a reason. Let's go put
bring awareness again.
An awareness of what's going on in a great organization like Semper Fi funds. So yeah, it was great. And then, doing all this stuff like the march. And so I'm going to invite you guys for next year's event. We're going to do 2,222 pull-ups in 22 hours.
Oh, boy.
And right before we're going to do our Veteran Suicide Awareness and Commemoration and Remembrance event next year. So that's going to be the big thing.
That's a lot of pull-ups.
That's a lot of pull-ups. Right now. Yeah. Are we each doing 100 and we're adding this up?
We're going to do 22 hours. Whoever comes out, stay for the whole 22. Come for an hour, do a couple. But together, we're going to do 2,222 pull-ups in 22 hours.
Oh, that's great. Count me in. As long as we're not away on a conference, if we're local, count me in. That's a great call.
I'll do too if we're around. Definitely.
Yeah. Great.
I might want to lose a little weight before then, make the pull-ups a little easier, but I'm in.
We got to start practicing.
Yeah. Chad, thanks for coming on. I think we hit a lot of interesting topics. I think you're a relatively young legislator. You've only been in office for 2 years, so you got theoretically another 10 left, and I think you have a lot of great ideas to help point this county in the right direction. So I thank you for coming on, and I thank you for talking about some of these issues here with us.
Yeah, it's great being on. Thank you for having me. And as I tell everyone, if anyone ever needs anything, call my office, email, stop by. We're here to help.
We appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.